All right, so welcome to, hi Jordan, just saw you came in, okay. Welcome to the financial planning for privately held businesses. This is probably one of those very interesting class that I saw the introduction from each one of you. Some of you have experience working with business owners, some of you don't. Some of you want to work with business owners, and some of you probably is business owners. So this hopefully the combination of things that can help you in some ways to gain some knowledge in about privately held businesses. Let me make sure I go through the right. I have so many different devices. I have to make sure I go to the right one. So before I actually get started, I wanted to kind of make some acknowledgement about what's going on. We know that we all predicted in the financial industry that there's going to be a downturn, but we did not know that the virus actually bring down the overall economy, and it's probably worse than what we have expected before. Then as we are going through the pandemic, we have this peaceful protest is going on. So I do wanted to acknowledge that some of you may be working from home because there's somebody at work who's got the virus and you have to be self-quarantined and things like that. Or some of you working from home is because that is just your company policy. And I could totally understand. You may have your pets running in the background, or you may have kids running in the background. The only thing that I'm more concerned about is my husband showing up in the background, not wearing his pants. That will be the only thing I'm mostly concerned about, because he does that all the time. Luckily that I locked the door so he wouldn't come in. So that is an inconvenient in terms of working from home. And many of you probably, or some of you may have already participated in some protest. The peaceful protest on the picture there, you can see my very good friend Yvette and her husband Jamie that participated in this weekend's protest in the University of North Carolina, Charlotte campus. Charlotte is where I live. I am kind of stuck in California, if you will. I'm too chicken to fly home, if you will. I asked my husband to fly here instead. So I haven't been back to Charlotte for quite some time. Yvette sent me this picture letting me know that she was part of the protest. So you may participate, you may not participate. I just wanted to acknowledge that there are a lot of things going on in our world, and we know the world is changing. And you're probably getting a lot of stress from work as well, because your clients are concerned. Your clients are concerned about what's going to happen. There's really not a good answer, but I do want to acknowledge that I understand each one of us are very, very busy, and there are things unexpected happening at work or in your world. If there are things that I can do, or if there are things that you need help, please reach out. I will do the best I can to accommodate and to help you as well. So I wanted to make sure that I acknowledge that first. Now I do want to go through a couple of things first, and that is I wanted to read through, and it's going to look like I'm reading something. I'm going to read through a couple of paragraphs of my next book. And my next book is just like what you're going to be learning in a classroom, but I'm going to read you a couple of things in my next book, so then I'm going to get you kind of into the perspective of what this class is going to cover. We know that individual clients who is rank and file employees is very different than business owners. Business owners create their wealth in their business equity assets, as well as their own savings. The risks they took on developing and operating their business is far greater than any individual who is a worker bee. The way the financial planning practitioners approach business owners is also different compared to individuals. This uniqueness of the business owners create a distinct planning approach. I'm going to go through one case study with you. I wanted to let you know that the fact is real, but the name has been changed for confidentiality purposes. So Mary was in an association group coaching session with me, and that is the Women Presidents Organization. You have to have a certain revenue level enabled to be accepted into the organization. The group coaching was designed to help owners grow their business, share resources, tackle difficult issues, and most importantly, support one another. So Mary and I oftentimes talked about that she has lots of friends, but none of them understand what she's going through, not even her husband, about the business situation. And I could echo that because I don't even bother to tell my husband things anymore. It's just too much to explain. He enjoyed all the first-class services he got, but he doesn't want to know what's going on. Group coaching allows owners like Mary and me to connect and learn differently. Having a successful women-owned business, especially in a construction business, is very rare, especially competing in a male-dominant industry. So Mary's right-hand person, Joan, and Mary had an excellent working chemistry together for a number of years. They continue to win big projects. Now, Mary's son, Bob, is not a salesperson who is really just good at logistically managing the back office, making sure things are working instead of being a salesperson. Now, Bob works for Mary since he got out of the college. And Mary recognized the fact that Bob is not a materials to take over her business, and Bob has no interest either, okay? Now, Mary took a lot of calculated risk in her business. To protect her business from any kind of economic downturn, Mary has seen a lot in her 30 years of industry experience. Besides her construction business, the way to diversify things out of the construction business, she had 3 commercial real estate properties nearby. The vacancy rate on average for her is about 3%, and that is very, very low compared to a typical commercial rental properties. Mary, very good thing about Mary is that she has no debt in her construction business, nor in her commercial real estate business. So you can see that just by knowing that, she is very conservative in terms of the way she managed her assets. Mary's hobby, construction business, and Mary's hobby is hunting, to be honest. The hunting trips takes her around the world. In Mary's office, this is not the tiger skin that I saw in the office, but this is the closest one that I could find from the internet. Back then, I didn't have the nerve to take out my cell phone and take a picture in her office. Her house has even more displays of elephant tusks, bear, and so on and so forth. So you can kind of see that from her hobbies to her way of managing assets, her approach to this entire end of retirement things is very different. Now, a business owner like Mary loves to talk about their success. And financial planning practitioners like myself or you could learn a lot from the owner like Mary through the conversation about her aspiration. The discussion could be sometimes vivid, and sometimes when I was in her office, I ended up visiting many of her key management team members, if you will. I took a trip to her commercial real estate properties and so on and so forth. My first meeting with Mary, I know halfway through our discussion, this is way over my head. What I mean by that was at the time, this was my 3rd year as an independent retail advisors. I was affiliated with Lincoln Financial at the time, but I knew I did not have enough confidence to move forward with the case design with Mary, even though I do a lot of business owners planning. And my mistake at the time was to not trust myself's gut feel, even though I have plenty of experience to work with her. I instead called the Lincoln's headquarters and say, do you have any planner nearby that has the experience that could joint work with me on this particular case? That was my mistake number 2. Mistake number 1 was I didn't trust my instinct. And the mistake number 2 was to bring someone in to joint work with me. Not because joint work is not good. It was because that planner was focusing so much about insurance implementation. You see, in financial planning, a lot of times succession planning is like a synonymous or a similar term to insurance selling. As a matter of fact, if you work with CPAs, if you ask CPA what is estate planning means to you, they will always tell you in a second, life insurance. So that was my mistake number 2 by bringing in someone who is really top notch in the industry, but his focus was insurance planning, not necessarily succession planning. That's where my focus was. And the mistake that I made really made me think through about the entire financial planning approach for business owners because they are so unique about their assets. And, but the mistake that I made with Mary was that I positioned me to get a bigger project later on, where I will tell you about the project some other time. But over the years, what Mary had told me through the conversation, after I knew that I wasn't a good fit to work with her because of this other joint partner, Mary told me this. She had seen so many planners over the years. Remember, she's in the business for 30-some plus years. Life insurance implementation alone does not address her situation. As a matter of fact, she often told planners that there's nothing you can tell me that I don't already know. And Mary was correct. As a matter of fact, many business owners that I work with, they tell me the same thing. And there is a distinct difference planning approach when working with business owners. Many financial planning practitioners did not have the training to work with business owners. And it's not your fault because even in the CFP handbook, it does not have how to work with business owner either. So in this class, what I'm going to go through is 3 major areas, and they're not sequentially designed from week to week. The very first section I'm going to take you through is business sense. The second section is equity value, especially on the business equity value. The third part will spend very little time on the planning framework because there's just so much to cover in this course. So let me go through what business sense means. Business sense means to recognizing business owners' characteristics from their perspective. What's going through the owner's mind is very different than what the rank and file individual does. A solid understanding of what owners face daily basis could help you as a financial planning professionals to better prepare to talk with them in a business sense. The other things that we're going to go through is the business equity value. And remember, this is one of the assets that business owner has. Equity value section, business equity value goes very deep on what matters the most to the owners, especially the largest assets of any business owner has is their business assets, not to mention they are e-liquid. Okay, they're e-liquid assets. The last portion we're going to talk about is the planning framework, and that includes planning assumptions, transfer channels, tax consequences, implementation process, and so on and so forth. So this class has a lot for us to go through, and it's not something that I expect any one of us to become an expert with one class. My hope is that through the class, you would have good understanding and have the faith to work with the business owner with what you learn from the class. And additionally, I'm hoping that you can also use the same principle to plan for your own financial planning practice, because at the end of the day, that's an asset that you own as well. So to be successful in this class, you have your independent study. That includes discussion, includes case studies, reading materials, as well as business models. And you can see the percentage there. Discussion is approximately about 12% of your grades, and that's only 5 weeks of discussion, not counting this week, your introduction. You have 2 case studies. One is for executives, and the other one is for a business owner. The business owner case in this particular scenario is actually a financial advisor. So this will be something that will be very near dear to your heart as well, especially if those of you have your own practice or planning to have your own practice. The business model portion of it is about 5%. This is going to help you kind of rethink about how you are planning for your own business in your planning practice, if you will. Then we have group presentation. Group presentation are tied into the weekly reading. We have 2 groups, and in a moment we'll go through the demo. You actually see who is in the group. And so there are about 6 weeks of group presentation starting next week, all the way till week 6. That's approximately about week 7, and that's approximately about 14% or so. Then you have your individual research paper. Every week you're going to write a module of a research, and that comprises of total grades of 20%. So there are approximately 7 of those. And then your final paper is about 24%, and you have a final presentation at week 8. Every single week when you write your modular research, I will be giving you feedback. As much time you spend on writing them and reading your research, it will be the same amount of time that I will be giving you the feedback. I do want to let you know that learning is uncomfortable, which means that if I give you a feedback, nothing is personal. This just means that I'm going to make you uncomfortable to think outside of the box. And that's part of your learning process. You are going to feel uncomfortable, but if you don't like my feedback, it's okay. As you know, planning, there's no right or wrong. I'm just giving you how I see things, how my experience tells me. Am I 100% correct? Not necessarily, but I think that there's always reason that I'm going to give you certain feedback to make you think beyond what you are thinking. There are several textbooks, and I have to apologize that the library did have a downtime for I don't even know how many days until many of you emailed me. But luckily they all came back. So hopefully that you didn't have to spend any money to buy these textbooks. There are approximately about 6, I believe there are a total of 8 of them, but 6 of them I have displayed here. That some of them are actually very good books that if you like, I would encourage you to keep a copy and just buy them an Amazon Kindle copy, that will work. But we're gonna be focusing on mostly on a couple of the books that we're going to be focusing on. This one will be the one that we will be very, very much heavily concentrated on, because it's probably the most structured textbook that is very helpful for this book. Your case study is going to come from here and someplace else. This book right here, these 3 books here, these are excellent books for you in terms of financial planning practice. They do give you a good idea of what's the landscape today in terms of your competitors and how is the industry is going to move forward. So all of these are going to be part of your reading materials. So that means that there are a lot of reading materials besides the recording part of the videos that you're going to go through. So, be conscious about your time management in this class, because besides the reading here, you also have to find articles to support your research. Some of the articles that you read through these books may be part of your reference in your research. Use as much as possible from I already provided, so that will save you some time in terms of your research time. As I mentioned, that we have 2 case studies. One is from the textbook, and that's mostly focusing on working with executives in terms of their contract, stock options, and so on and so forth. But the main ones you're going to be working on, there are 2 parts of the assignment, part 1 and part 2, and I'll get through that when we get closer to the case study. This is actually an advisor firm that I worked with just last year. And so a lot of the information there is going to be very pertinent to your own practice as well, especially for those of you who are planning to have your own practice or already have your own practice today. If you don't have practice today, you can also think about what the owner are thinking about, the firm that you work with. So those are 2 case studies we're going to go through. The structure we have is 8 weeks of lectures. The last week will be mostly focusing on your presentation of your research. So week 1 and 2, we're going to be focusing on characteristics. I'm going to be focusing mostly on the owner's characteristics on week 1 and 2. We are going to touch base on some executive portion of it, but I'm going to rely on you to read on them in the textbooks. Then week 3, 4, and 5, and 6 are all about techniques. We have to first understand the middle market. Middle market is typically the one that you service, whether or not they're small, mid-sized business, that's what we typically service. And this is also a good idea for you to learn about the debt. We don't necessarily talk about debt in typical financial planning. I'm not talking about financial ratio. I'm talking about how to best utilizing debt in a business. Those kind of conversations are going to come up when you work with business owners, like it or not, even though you may not feel comfortable about it, but that's something that you need to know about. They are going to ask you. They are going to ask you about SBA loan. You better know where to find this information. Then we're going to be spending time looking at valuations. You are not going to become a valuation specialist, not from this class, but this is going to give you a good idea of what type of valuation you should use. When you receive a valuation from an appraiser, when you work with a business owner, what to look for, what value should you actually use, for what purpose. So there are many different valuations behind it. You need to know which one to use, especially for those of you who actually do life insurance sales to your business owners. You better know which valuation to use, because you just can't pick one out of many. You have to know which one to apply is the most appropriate for the purpose of a life insurance. We will spend time talking about external and internal transfer, and I will give you some statistics next week about what is in the owner's mind in terms of external or internal transfer. And week 7, we're going to spend time to talk about financial planning practice. There's a lot to it because it's just very unique, just like the attorney's firm, just like CPA firms. To my surprise, after I started working with business owners, I did not know that one of my largest group of clients comes from CPAs. And the reason, I think, was because we are very much speaking the same language. CPAs understand how the number works, and they are so highly analytical. And so we speak the same language. So I have quite a bit of CPA firms that I work with. And because of the number of firms that I work with, I started to work with financial planning firms starting 5 years ago. There's just a lot of similarity to it, to that uniqueness of business owners. So we're going to spend some time talking about the financial planning practice. And my really hope is to hope you walk away with, at least if it's for nothing you learn from this class, at least do something about your own practice. There are lots of things that we will do in this class, and I have due days on the left-hand side, and I have assignment, group presentations, and discussions. So all of these are in the Blackboard, but I figured I'll give you one-page screenshot so you kind of see where everything is. You can see that we have your case study. This one is for the executive case study. And then we have your financial planning practice. This is part 1. And part 2 is here. So you have 2 parts of that. And in between, you're going to start looking at and writing your paper. You're going to start with what questions do you have for the research. You're going to start looking at literature review 1 and 2. You're going to have 2 parts of that. And then you're going to talk a little bit about how you are going to measure your research. And then on last week, you will do the presentation. And then week after that, after last week, you will turn in your final conclusion of the paper. Starting next week, you will start doing the group presentation. My hope is that every single one of you will present in a group presentation. I am not looking for you to recite what you read. I'm looking for what can you do with that piece of information from a practitioner's perspective. What piece of information can you apply when you're working with clients? When you're working with yourself, your own firm. So I'm looking for not only a high-level summary of what you read, but what is the implication? What's the application of it? So 3 things I'm looking for, just a top-level summary, I really don't need you to recite because I'm assuming everyone read it. And then I'm going to look for implication as well as application of the material you read. And because 6 of you are in one group, that means that you need to figure out who is going to present what section. And I'll let you guys decide that. Typically in most of the classes I will time you. In this class, I am not going to time you because you have about 10 to 20 minutes to present. You have plenty of time, but please don't go over 20 minutes because you have other groups going to be presenting. While you are listening to other groups' presentation, your group, the listening group, has to come up with questions. And those are the things that you have to prepare for, a list of questions for the presenter before you come through the class. And you will see that in a moment when Eric takes you through the Blackboard, you'll see where they are. So those are the things in terms of the group presentation. Discussion is tied into the videos that you're going to be watching. So there are some videos that I have linked into weekly basis. Some of these weekly videos are very long. They may be 1 hour long or hour and a half long. Just bear with me. There are questions tied into the discussion. So watch some of these videos. Be sure to be able to answer that. And you are also required to reply to at least one of your peer group of what they are saying. So other than answering your own portion of the questions, be sure to reply to someone else's discussion as well. Okay, but I'm only looking for one because there are a lot of things that you could say about what you watch and what your takeaway is, but just one for one other peers in your group. So many of you probably are wondering, okay, so we haven't even begun the class. You're asking me to write a paper. I don't even know where to begin. Fair. So I'm going to give you a couple of ideas, and some of these are topics as the past class students have wrote about. So for example, you could write about leverage buyout. Would it even make sense for some business owners? Leverage buyout or management buyout. Those are the two things that are very common that owner face on an ongoing basis if they get tapped into certain private equity firms. So you can talk about that. The most famous leverage buyout tend to be ending in bankruptcy. So you could talk about that as well. Like Toys R Us is one of the case. Sears is another case. So you could use that as an example of a topic. What makes ESOP good? A good way to cash out. That's also a topic that many of your business owner clients, if they're big enough, that sometimes they might ask you that question. And you might want to consider that as your research topic as well. Deferring business entity capital gain using, this is a typo there, using section 1202. That is also a topic to talk about. The other things that you could also do is case study. So one of my past class, John, was one of the students who already got his MBA with the CFP. He used his dad's business. He was not in the business. His dad was in some sort of engineering business. So he wrote about his dad's business as a case study format as a research. You could do that as well. If you have a client case that you wanted to use for the purpose of today's, for this class, you could do that as well. If you are going to do research in the case study, let me know and I can provide you with a different framework. Case study is a little bit different writing framework compared to a typical research. Or you can simply look at your own business. If you have a advisor business currently that you either a partner or owner of the firm, that this is the case I'm actually currently working on. I just got a call today about this case. A financial advisor who's a CFP has worked for this firm that she's actually thinking about buy out the firm. But this firm has two parts. One part is an insurance agency. The other part is a fee-based model. And both business has generation 1 and generation 2 involved. So, you know, you can look at your own case and look at your own situation or someone that you know, use that as a case study as part of your research topic as well. So you could do whichever that suits you, but I would encourage you to scan through the syllabus. The syllabus has every week's materials. Look at each week's topics that we're going to cover. From there, pick what are you going to do about your research. Because week 2, you're going to submit what is your research question. And so you're going to start doing some digging over this weekend. In a moment, I'm going to ask Eric, the team captain, to go through our libraries to help you research how to get about some research article about to support your research. All right, so today we'll go through the demo of the Blackboard, and then I will take you through today's, this week's materials in terms of characteristics of the business owners, and then I'll talk about the next week. So I'm going to stop sharing for a moment, and I'm going to ask Eric to share your screen.
Okay.
Okay, so Eric, let's go to week 1, please. So scroll down. So week 1, you obviously you have videos to watch, textbook link. I wanted to remind everyone that the link that I provided in a textbook in the library, in the last class that I taught, the link to that specific chapter was working, but not anymore. So I will bring you to the book, but pay attention on what chapter I'm asking you to read, so then move to that particular chapter accordingly. So if you look at, let's go to the second book, which is the, yeah, so so go to in the middle, there's a link, go to that link. Not the last one, the middle link.
This link?
No, the one above, right above. There you go. So let's go to, that will bring you to the library. And because I'm asking you to read Introduction, Chapter 1, 2, and 3, so click on the View Book, View eBook. That will bring you directly to the publisher's website. And because it doesn't have a specific, or yes, you have to log in, but it doesn't necessarily give you a specific link to that chapter, so you need to watch out what chapter that I put on the Blackboard and then read that accordingly. So you can say read online. If you wanted to download a certain part of the book, why is it telling you to do a survey? That's really weird. Okay, so scroll down to the left-hand side. If you scroll down, yeah, you'll see all the chapters. And then if you look at, there's chapter 1, that's your case study. And then you have introduction. So introduction is the, so introduction is a chapter that you need to read for this week. And if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see chapter 2, 3, and 4. That's what you will be reading for this week. So the link that I provided in Blackboard doesn't necessarily drive you to that particular chapter. So just watch out for what chapter you're supposed to read. All right, let's go back to Blackboard, please. All right, if you scroll down, you'll see this week you have a case study. So the case study that is in the book that Eric was just in, and that is in chapter 1. Chapter 1 is the case study. Read through it. I just need a very short document for you to describe what the client's goals, cash flow, assets, risks associated with that. And I do need you to produce in a Word document as well as a PowerPoint presentation, just 3 slides. I will pick who is going to present next week. I don't know yet. I'll let you know next week. So be prepared for presenting that case study. This particular case study is just to get to know what they are, because the book that you're reading is going to be talk about that case throughout the book. So just get a good grip of what that case is. All right, so let's go to library, please. Let's go to My CLU. Go to My CLU. click on the library. Scroll up a little bit, you will see it. It's, yeah,
Right here.
there you go. And I'm going to ask you to put in the search. So scroll down, you see a search bar. Okay, so in there, let's go ahead and put in privately held business owners. And click search. Assume that you really don't know what topic you're going to be looking for and search it, and you'll find a whole bunch of things. Okay. And so you probably will be looking for something through the library, just search them. Maybe you are looking for leverage buyout. You can just type leverage buyout to look for them. If you're looking for management buyout, you could do that as well. If you're looking for section 1202, you could do that as well. So whichever topic that you have interest in, chances are you'll be able to find reference material to support your research. So just keep in mind that you will be needing the library to kind of give you some support. So there are going to be some other reading that you will be doing in able to produce your research. All right. All right. Questions? Any questions regarding about searching in the library, operating in the Blackboard in terms of weekly assignments, discussion, so on and so forth. Oh, by the way, Eric, if you can go back to Blackboard, for next week, for your week 2 presentation, the submission is on week 2, not on week 1. So the presentation is actually submission in week 2, group presentation, you'll see that in week 2. Okay, so that's where you're going. So each group is going to have a chapter assigned. And I have specific things that I put down there for you to do. Now, Eric, if you can scroll up a little bit, let's go to the team captain. There's something that I forgot to show.
Hey, Professor, I have a quick question.
Yes, Dave.
Maybe I missed it. So on the research project, do you want us to limit our research just to the library, or are we allowed to use websites as well?
Unless it's a government website.
Okay.
Yeah, typically the research that you conduct in the library, you probably have to say is a peer review research. That's probably the most closest to a research. So if you use a website, it can be a website unless it's a government related. You can also use Google Scholar to search. Google Scholar typically can give you a little bit easier to look for what you're looking for. So website is okay as long as they are a government related or research based. For example, you may come across something like Pew Research Center that produce quite a bit of research in business owners, or you might come across, what is that foundation? There's several foundations that focus on business owners. Those are okay because they are not for profit and they have a research arm around it. So that will be okay for that. Did I answer your question, Dave?
Yeah, that was great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the team captain is listed for each week. You can see, so like this week is Eric and next week will be Chris, so on and so forth. And then we have 2 groups, group 1 and group 2. And the names is listed there. So you guys will figure it out. I'll let you guys figure it out who is going to do what in next week. It's not necessarily a huge chapter to read, but I'm gonna let you guys figure out what you're gonna present and who's gonna do what. There's also a URL link right above the group. That is where we are going to be using on a weekly basis. I usually have polls in the classroom, so make sure that that's where you find the link. You can just click on it and go there. And then in a moment, we're actually going to be doing some poll in the classroom. The other thing I will look for the team captain to do is oftentimes I'm looking at the screen. I may or may not be able to recognize if there's any chat going on. If there are chat that I don't see a questions, please just stop me, because if I don't see it, I won't be able to answer it. So you can do that. So just stop me if there's a question or something that I didn't answer. Or if I say something, it happens that I sometimes speak something in Chinese that you can just tell me, I don't understand, and that's okay. It happens. So feel free to let me know with that. All right, any questions on Blackboard, assignments, research, before we move on?
On an earlier slide, you showed that every week there's a research module that has to be completed. I just wanted to get some clarification on that, whether that's where I can find that in Blackboard.
Yeah, so let's go to week 2. We're in week 2, right? So if you scroll down a little bit, you will see final paper part 1. That's your part 1, research questions. And I give you a link of what you should follow in terms of how to write that week 1 and how many words I'm looking for, or how many pages, what is the citation I'm looking for, things like that. So week 2, week 3, week 4, every single week you have a module there. And this is where every week I will be giving you feedback. And when you write your final, so basically every week you have a module to write, then you revise them accordingly once you get my feedback. At the end of the final paper, you simply assemble them all together to become your final paper. So this way is much more digestible. So every week we're writing a little bit of something instead of one last week that you have to cram so many words into one week. So every week you will find an assignment accordingly for that. So week 2, other than the PowerPoint presentation you have to do next week, you have your business model that you have to do next week, not in class, but as a week 2 assignment, as well as do a research paper. All right. Any other questions? You're welcome.
Yeah, how should we address you? Is it Dr. Qian?
That will be fine too.
Well, the reason I'm asking is because I know that in Chinese, what we would consider in America the first name is sometimes the surname, and so I get confused. So I want to make sure that I'm addressing your name the proper way.
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you.
So Jen is my last name, yes. And if you ask my husband, he's going to tell you my wife is very liberal. She didn't take my last name because I was born and raised in Taiwan. There is no requirement for us to take husband's last name. So don't ever call my husband Mrs. or Mr. Jen. He's going to be very upset.
Got it. When I run into him, I'll be sure to address him properly.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
Dr. Chen, one more question. And maybe this is in the details within each week, but generally speaking, are each of the assignments due at the end of the week? So for example, on week 2, are they due by the 21st? Is that kind of how that works, or?
Yes, so let me kind of run through. So Eric, if you don't mind to stop sharing your screen, I'm gonna go back and share my screen here. So let me go back a few pages here. So you can see that week 2, the due date is on the left-hand side here. So week 2, you have a case study that is due. Basically, week 1, your case study is due on 14th. PowerPoints is also due on 14th, right? You have also discussion 1, most of you have done already, okay? And then your week 3 PowerPoint is due on the 21st. Research question is also due on the 21st.
Perfect. That's super helpful. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. All right, thank you, Eric, very much for showing the demo. All right.
Sorry,
So,
excuse
yeah,
me. Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I didn't get it. Can I see the page you showed us? Yes.
Yeah,
the due date. Yes.
Yeah. Keep in mind that this is going to be whatever I'm showing you today. I will provide a link to you after class.
Yeah.
So you will have a link of this as well.
Yeah, I just want to ask the case study B due date. Is it the group PPT?
No.
Week 2. No, that's not the week 2 group.
Individual assignment.
Okay.
That's your individual assignment this week. This week,
okay.
week 1.
So next week we don't need to present a group presentation. No,
yes,
we
do
don't.
have a
we
group
don't
presentation next week.
Next week?
Yes.
Okay.
Next week you have a group presentation.
On next Monday?
Yes.
Okay, I got it.
And the materials on week 2's reading.
Okay.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Dr. Chen, why is
Group
there,
presentations is only one that is a week ahead. Yes.
what happened to discussion 2 and 6?
That means that I don't have discussion in week 2.
Oh, okay.
We only had 5 discussions.
Gotcha.
Yeah, because there's just a lot to do in this class. So it's really unnecessary to have that many discussions, if you will. All right, any other questions? All right, make sure you are ready for the poll everywhere. We are going to start asking some questions. All right, so hopefully that you have your poll ready. My first questions to you is, why are business owners in business? Type that into the poll, please. And they're anonymous, so whatever you type is okay. I only see the answer, but I don't know who is answering it. Okay. They want money. They want to be the boss. Yes. Independent.
I'm sorry, where do I get to the poll?
You can go to the Team Captain page, and the Team Captain page has a link that you can just link on it. There's a link that I display in the Team Captain page.
Okay.
Try that and see if that works. Let me see if I can change the visual setting to that. Okay, so that's a little bit easier to view. Oops, save change. Okay, to make money, to be their own boss, to, in the way, the manner that they want, good. Okay, make it money, okay. Work for themselves, okay.
That link's not working for me. I don't know if anybody else is having a problem, but I can't, won't let me click on the link.
Are you working within your office secure network? Well, Eric, thank you. You could just, so Eric and Logan both posted the link there. You can click on that in the chat box. See if that will work.
Control and click on the link at the same time.
Uh-huh, okay. So oftentimes that when, and you probably will be asking your business owners, clients the same questions, you know, why are they in the business? Yeah, you can copy and paste. Thank you, Eric. Most of the time, people tell me that they wanted to build wealth. They want to have flexibility. They have some sort of passion. And there are so many reasons people are in business. But at the same time, in the business, there's also quite a bit of other things that they have to deal with, especially one of the discussion questions toward the probably week 6 or 7, there's going to be a talk, and I'm looking forward to have your feedback there, was you are going to have people who start very late in terms of starting their business, like in their 60s. That's something that you also have to be sure to talk about it with clients. Build legacies. But I can tell you that oftentimes that people are in a business, besides the money, yes, you're right. Sometimes they want to pursue their dreams. And sometimes they just wanted to solve a problem. Launder money, I don't know about that. All right, I'm going to move on to the next slide. Thank you very much for putting that in. So in general, okay, I do want to kind of give you some statistics. Every 6 new business open, 5 close, okay? And a firm that survived 5 years, and they have staff, they employ staff, that's only approximately about 5.8%. And by the way, there are about 34 million businesses in the United States that filed tax returns in 2015. And there are many more that hasn't filed tax return yet. Many businesses you probably know of do not file tax returns. So for those 34 million of them, 5.8% of them that survive to 5 years that has employees. And about 5%, only roughly about 5% generate more than $1 million revenue. Okay, so what that means is that there are a lot of risks. So can you tell me in this poll, which group have shown increasing in self-employment? We have half and half in here, close. That means that we have people that starting businesses in certain group. Now you would think that age 62 and under would be larger group, right? But surprising enough that you're right, for those of you pick age 62 and above, that's the group that has been increasing. And here's the statistics. So there's an increasing trend for self-employment for seniors, and seniors means age 62 and above. On average, I took the number divided by certain numbers. That means that between 1988 and 2015, approximately every year about 1% incremental increase of number of new business coming up in 62. One thing to keep in mind, later on in week 6 or 7, when we talked about working with clients who is individual rank and file employees, starting business in 62, please pay attention to that. There are a lot of people who wants to do that. You need to guide them through the risks associated with that, because there's no turning back. If they fail at this age, there is no turning back. Versus someone who started the business at 26. There's a lot of different risks in there. So out of those businesses out there, what is the percentage of the job created in the private sector? I'm talking about those company who has 500 plus employees and 10, well, actually it's less than 500 employees and 10 years in business. There's always a talk about majority of the jobs created in the US coming in from private businesses or small business. So I'm just curious about if you know which one is correct. Okay, good. Some of you are right on. Okay, all right, that's good. Let's take a look at the answer for that. So startup accounts for 3% of the total employment. And about 20% of them, they create about 20% job in the job creation process. The firms that has 5 years or less younger firm, typically they create about 40% jobs. When they initially started, as well as when they exit, they eliminate jobs too. But roughly about these companies, about 45% accounted for the entire job creation or jobs in the private sector, about 45%. So that's quite a large amount in the US. However, these sectors also create and eliminate about 40% of jobs. So this pandemic probably is the most obvious that you see. Majority of them are small business that get impacted. Because they create more jobs, they also lose most of the jobs. With the pandemics going on, there's going to be another wave of new business going up, all right? So those are the things that to consider as you go through counseling business owner clients. At the end of the day, there's a lot of risks. There are so much risks of creating business. For those of you successful in the financial planning practice, congratulations. For those of you a partner in the firm, congratulations. For those of you working for a successful business, congratulations. There are just a lot of inherent risks that many people don't necessarily take into consideration. This is something I'm going to talk about next week, and that is that there are 3 categories for business owners. 3 categories. Either they are they are a technician, I call them a job. Either they are a technician, and you see a lot of them, plumbers and smaller plumbers and HVAC, those kind of smaller jobs. They're typically technicians, and there are a lot of them. or their managers. They operate manager firms. The category that you want to aim for is architect, right? If they are architect of the firm, this is where they're going to bring most of the value coming in for themselves, or their, as well as their family and employees. But I'll talk a little bit more about that next week. At the end of the day, this is the triple bottom lines that every single business has to be careful with. This comes from one of my favorite authors, Ken Blanchard's book, Leading at a Higher Level. Ken Blanchard, for many of you, probably are too young to know who he is, but I'm going to throw out 2 books, hopefully that you will recognize him. So he has 2 famous books. One of them is called Who Moved My Cheese? The other one is 1 Minute Manager. So if you remember those 2 books, that came from Ken Blanchard's publications. He had mentioned that something called the triple bottom lines. That means that every single business, there are 3 things that you ought to be paying attention of, not just the financial bottom line. You have to pay attention about the employees. You have to pay attention about your customers, as well as your investors. So employees is in terms of whether or not you create a best place for them to work. Customers means that whether or not this is the best place for them to do business with you as a business. Or investors, you as an owner or your clients as owners are investors for their own business. Is this the best place for them to place their investment? And Fortune magazine every year do produce best company to work for, most admired company in terms of the customer's perspective, as well as investors. So these 2 sections, the right 2 columns here, that you will see that this is 2012. They stopped producing that in 2012. So the companies here you see is a little bit outdated on the right-hand column. But if you look at the best place to work in terms of the 10 companies I listed there, that's probably no surprise to you. But I always ask, is your company being listed locally to be the best place to work? Is your company being listed locally the best place to work? Put that in a group chat box, please. Put that in a group chat box. Is your company you work for is the best place to work, even in the local level? Okay, Jeff, oh, thank you, Jeffrey. Yes, okay. For those of you saying no, please go vote for yourself. That's what it's for. You need to go vote for yourself as the best place to work locally, unless it's not best place to work. But I would encourage you to do that. Your employees, the team that you're working with, all have any saying to it. So you wanted to create an environment to best place to work, because at the end of the day, people is your assets that's not showing up in your balance sheet. So they are your most important assets for your business. You want to make sure you have the best people, best place to work, because you have the best people, they will service your customer the best. So none of these are a surprise to you, but it's something that you need to have a conversation with your business owners, clients. These are what I call the value add type of conversations. And these are typically what you see, how we measure these. You could talk about capacity here, capacity and efficiency here. Customer, you're focusing on your sales channels and so on and so forth. Investor typically are focusing on their payback, return on investment. And they're also failure in business. Oftentimes failure in business could potentially combination of the wrong people are in your business, potentially you don't have enough market share, and potentially you don't consistently drive that return on investment that investors typically are looking for. So these are something to keep in mind in terms of when you are looking through the owner's lens. This is something that you need to continue to remind them of. It's not just their profit. It's also their employees. It's also their customers. It's also them as an investor itself. Your job, crucially, have to make your owner to turn them from an operator to an investor, okay? You need to help them turn their operator mind to an investor's mind. Otherwise, it is very difficult to cash out in any type of business. All right, let's talk about product cycle a little bit. There are various different product cycle. What percentage is a percentage of the early adopter? What I mean by that is, for example, iPad. My husband was the one is considered a late adopter. He didn't start using iPad until very late. Now he's glued to the iPad. It's just easy to use for him. Yeah, so part of the things that you want to have a good understanding of this is that your owner clients oftentimes is looking at these product cycle. Each one of this product cycle will require different type of capitals and will require different type of people in the loop. So you need to know where they are, okay? So good job. I think a majority of them get it right. So that comes from this particular book, from Starting with Why, and this is Simon Sinek, who is quite famous out there. So early adopter is about this. So this is the innovator. So if your clients are in the innovators, so for some of you are in the high-tech round, so few of you mentioned that you have high-tech business owners as clients. They tend to be on the innovator. That's the big profit margin side. If they are in the lagger portion of it, that means that they're going to have a razor thin profit margin. Many of the business owners that I work with tend to be on the other side, and you wanted to be able to understand where are they in their cycle, because that does have impact in their equity value. It also does have an impact on what strategy that you recommend to them. So watch out for that. Thank you. Thank you, James, for having a screenshot there. Okay, thank you for that. The other thing to watch out for is that for any given product or businesses, you need to be in 3 different horizons. That means that if you have a product 1 coming up, by the time you are at the peak of the product 1, you need to be launching your product 2, so on and so forth. So from an owner's perspective, they are constantly revamping their product and services. You don't just sit on a product and not changing them. So over time, you have to encourage your business owner to really, really look at, you can't be selling the same gadget over time. Something has to change. Otherwise, the customer is going to go somewhere else. When the customer goes somewhere else, your business value goes down. So these are the things that you do want to ask your business owners. They may not be able to verbally describe to you, but they conceptually all understand what this is. Yeah, Apple does this very, very well. You're right. They have a schedule. They have a very, very tight schedule of every product release, right? They can keep up with that, and the customer has also to keep up with that too. The other things to also keep in mind is that the clients oftentimes have business partners. They also have stakeholders, right? Both business partners and stakeholders have 2 different aspects that you do pay attention of. Stakeholders could be employees, stakeholders could be customers, stakeholders could be investors. Their business partners also different. Their suppliers, their vendors plays a big value creation as well. So if you look from this chart here, that on the left-hand side, you have investors or lenders here. They infuse the funding or the capital into the business. And that capital helps a business to create either resource or products or get enough supplies. Then through there, they create value for that particular business. Out of it, the customers will at the end buying it, and then that cycle will begin again and again. So oftentimes that when you work with business owners, you wanted to understand who are their business partners, especially on the supply side of the things, as well as the customer side of the things, because they not only create opportunities, but they also create risks. For example, one of my clients, they have one very major vendor, one, supply them all the stones that they need in the construction. That's not a good thing, because what if that company couldn't pay it up? And that happened. What if that company couldn't supply you? And that happened. So you wanted to make sure that diversifying customers is not just the only thing you recommend. You also have to look at their suppliers. Another client of mine who is a supplier for Procter & Gamble, they supply something called a non-woven fabric. Non-woven, I don't even think it's fiber. They call it fiber, not fabric. Which basically makes the surgical gowns, diapers, these kind of things. So you can imagine how much money they make today, because so much masks has to be made today. And that's all come from the non-woven fibers. So she supplied to Procter & Gamble. But Procter & Gamble does not allow her to supply to a certain dollar amount because they diversify their suppliers. They want to make sure that there is no risk and there's not one supplier can hold them hostage in their situation. So you wanted to help your clients think through that as well. Customers also another things. One of my clients, when I first started working with them, 90% of their revenue, and you'll be shocked to hear this, but this happened a lot for smaller business, that comes from one client. And that one client is Fortune 500 company, which is great. But that also delays the payment because Fortune 500 companies tend to delay their invoice payment. Oftentimes it's 90 days, sometimes up to 6 months, and there's nothing you can do about it. You can take them to court. That's your expense coming out of your expense. They have big attorneys on their side. So you wanted to help your clients diversify either side, suppliers as well as customers, and also pay attention about their employees, because their employees ultimately is the value that they have to help service their clients. These are the value drivers that we typically looked at, and there are some examples in here. So if I look at financial industry on the banking side, the value drivers comes in from customer retentions. So in a group chat box, you can tell me this: what is your customer retention ratio in your current business that you work for? Either you work for your own business. In a group chat box, please tell me, what is your customer retention ratio today? The company you work for or your own firm, you ought to have a number. What is your customer retention ratio? Good, good, good. Thank you, Zoe, for 96%. Jeff is 98%. Jeffrey is 100%. Good job. Chris is 90%. Ari is 90%. Jordan is 98%. Logan say not sure. Maybe you should find out. Maybe it's 99%. Eric is 99%. James, if you're not sure, find out, right? Because that's a value driver. Why is customer retention in the financial industry is important? Put that in a group chat box. Why is it important? Why is customer retention ratio that important in the financial industry? Cross-sell referrals, very good, okay. Cost to acquire new customer, that's right. Cost to acquire new customer is far greater than retention, right? Cheaper to keep the customers, you're right. That's right, very good. Outflow is also important as the inflow, that's right. So keep in mind, as we map out value for the company, retention actually come in play as one of those value adds. We always, once you have evaluation done, you will always have something come back with what we call the add back. The add back to that value that has been appraised, retention is one of those. And you can see that if I looked at on the retail sector will have something to do with capital investment, right? Capital investment oftentimes could be part of those value add that people have to look at. Energy portion of it, it's, if you are in the utility fields, if there are in exploration of a certain field, the success rate is important. So every single industry has its own value drivers. So before you actually work with the client, do a little bit of research before you talk with them. But at the end of the day, they will know. They know that answer as well. So you wanted to find out from them what is the actual true value driver for them. Within an organization, there are also value driver. Each organization has different function. You have financial function, operational functions, you have customer service, you got training portion, you have also dependencies there. Each one of these function potentially also creates some value driver in the organization. All of them need to pay attention of. This is something that the previous page and this page is something that oftentimes doesn't talked about a lot with the business owners. And this is where I believe that you can create that value add for your customers or your business owner clients. So something to consider, to discuss, to help them understand that each one of the function within their firm also drives that value in terms of the equity value of the firm. Okay, thank you, Chris and Jordan, talking about revenue, referrals, and so on and so forth. Yes, so referral is a big part in terms of a business value perspective. The organization then oftentimes get measured on their performance, and the performance could be measured based on a specific goal, could based on a specific value drivers, or potentially are some sort of metrics. So in the group chat box, you can think about business owner, or you can think about your own business that you work for now. Give me one key performance indicator. Give me one KPI that you typically measure that will have the impact of a business value. Okay, so Jeff mentioned about, is it net cash flow or is it net flow of what? Logan mentioned about asset under management. Eric mentioned about gross assets, okay? Dave at AUM. Okay, James mentioned about revenue, very good. Ari mentioned about growth of the individual book of business, okay, good. Increase in AUM, Jordan, thank you. So one that is very common, universally common in the financial industry, but how about business owners? Think about your business owner client. What type of KPI they typically measure? What are some of the KPI? Growth of the client base, good, thank you, Jeffrey. Eric mentioned about the units sold, right? Units sold, a particular product unit sold could probably give you a trend about which product is sells better compared to the others, right? And sales, right? James, thank you. So understanding what is important for your business owners, because at the end of the day, unless you specialize in one field or one industry, it is really hard to see which one is most important to help them understand. So ask them, what kind of KPI do they have? For example, a lot of the manufacturing and construction or capital intensive firm, so if it's a capital intensive firm, they typically measure EBITDA, right? That may sound familiar to many of you, that EBITDA has been measured. And that's been measured, and that will reflect people's bonus percentage, as well as potentially the covenant with the bank. If they have a line of credit or any kind of loan, oftentimes that EBITDA may be the measurement that they have to report back on a regular basis, as well as measure their top performing employees. So that would be something, tend to be in a capital intensive type of firm, such as manufacturing or construction firm that needs a lot of equipment. For high-tech companies such as software company, it's probably not EBITDA. They probably will measure EBIT instead. And this is your operating income. This is a good measure for the performance of management. Okay, so some of these are the things that you wanted to make sure that before you work with business owners or while you're working with the business owners, these are the terminologies that you are comfortable saying. And even if they don't know, This will be a value add you provide to help them understand how to drive their business forward. We're going to talk a little bit about this next week in terms of value driver tree. If you look from the left-hand side all the way to the right, you notice that we begin with the net profit margin. And we looked at, obviously, financial ratio here, right? So all of the financial terms get to measure in here. Then you have operational, you have tactic, various different type of tactic or strategies, and you have performance indicators. So many of you mentioned about sales, right? You mentioned about sales previously. Your AUM could be here. That goes to, from the right-hand side, that the starting point on the right-hand side, you move all the way to the left. At the end, you've arrived at the net profit margin. But there are several different drivers to push around that. So we'll talk a little bit more about this next week. The textbook, the major textbook that you're reading, which is the private capital market, that textbook summarized to this page. And this is the page that I created a while back. You feel free to use it with your clients, because at the end of the day, when you talk about business equity value, that's the three categories we looked at. We looked at how to increase the EBITDA. We looked at how to reduce risk. We're going to look at, are you investing enough into your business? So we'll talk a little bit more about this whole chart next week. And we'll have a breakout session next week as well regarding about this. So this is a very useful chart I use with my client. Every client's a little bit different. Some clients can only take on one or two things on the strategy side. Some clients could take on three. Some clients could take on one. So depending upon what stages that they are in, you will recommend them accordingly. So that's on the business equity value side of the goals. All right, so let's talk about next week. We have about a few minutes to go. I wanted to make sure that we have a little bit of time talking about next week. So next week, you're going to be reading your book. So there are two books you're going to be reading. This is the book you're going to be reading from chapter 2 to 4, as well as introduction. So you have an intro chapter. Then you have 2 to 4 as part of your reading. And your chapter 1 is actually your case study. That's your assignment. You also wanted to start reading on week 2. I believe it's only one chapter or so for each group. So there's one chapter of each group. So find out in your week 2 in Blackboard what chapter your group has been assigned to. And you guys need to make sure that you get together somehow in an email, somewhere, to figure out who does what next week. I'm expecting each one of you, there are 6 of you in one group, I'm expecting each one of you to present. So figure out who's going to present what. The discussion, I believe all of you've done already for this group, this particular week. So there's really, you already done part of the homework. And you have that chapter 1 case study here for next week. So next Sunday, I'm expecting you to finish reading of week 1. I'm also expecting you to finish your case study of chapter 1. I also expect you to finish your group presentation reading as well as the PowerPoint. That will be the homework assignment I'm expecting on Sunday. So questions, do we have any questions in terms of what I've gone through the material today as well as the homework assignments? If you have questions, just simply unmute. EBITDA is earning before interest and taxes, depreciation, and amortization.
Quick question on the group presentations. You said each group is 20 minutes total, so each person's only going to have a few minutes to talk?
That's right.
Okay.
Thank you, Chris. You could just unmute your line if you have any questions.
I have a question. I'm sure you covered this. Where do I find who's in what group in Blackboard?
So if you're in Blackboard, click on Team Captain. There's on the left-hand side, you will see a menu of Team Captain. Just click on that. And then
Okay.
once you are in a team captain, you will see group 1 and group 2.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep. And maybe this is a good time for you to find out who's supposed to be coordinating your presentation next week. You might as well find out now before you leave, because we have group 1 and group 2. I try to give you an even number of CFP and CFA on both groups, so so the reference is about the same in terms of experience and all that. Any other question?
Well, I'm in group 1. I'd be happy to organize the group 1 get together this week. I'll email everyone tonight, and yeah, hopefully we can get the ball rolling.
Okay, thank you, Ari. So Ari will be doing group 1 there. Okay, so thank you, Eric, for that. So group 1, we have Ari is going to manage all the coordination. Do we have anybody from group 2?
I just looked up, this is Chris. I just looked up everybody's name, and I'll go through the group, the week 1 group discussion. I can pull your emails from that and try to put something together if that works for everybody.
Okay. So are you in group 2, Chris?
I'm in 2, yeah, sorry.
In 2, okay. So group 2, Chris is going to coordinate that. So thank you guys for doing that. So group 2, please look for email from Chris. Any other question? We have a quiet group. I usually get a lot of questions and feedback.
We already know everything.
You know everything. Okay, that sounds good. I look
of course,
forward to
I'm
it.
you know I'm being facetious there, but that's that could explain the silence, though.
Oh yeah, you're right. Don't know where to ask. That might be true. All right, so with that, if you have any other questions that I did not answer in today's session, you can still email me. Email is the best way to get to me, and I will do the best I can to return your email within probably 24 to 48 hours. Most of the time, I respond pretty quickly. All right, so if there's no other questions, I look forward to your next week's group presentation as well as your homework assignments. And if you have questions, feel free to email and reach out to your group. Group 2, reach out to Chris, and then group 1, reach out to Ari for any correlation. I'm sorry, it's the end of the Monday. Make sure you coordinate everything for next week. All right, with that, have a great night, and I will see you next week, 5:30, and enjoy your weekend. And please don't be like me. I need to eat less because I have to eat all the time to get distracted by eating. So don't eat too much. All right, have a good night and stay healthy, and I'll see you next week.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
Good night. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.